Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, and welcome to Talking with Teachers. I'm your host, Dr. Abdullah bin Hamid Ali, and our guest today is Imam Rashad Abdul-Rahmaan. Imam Rashad is the founder and director of the Institute of Qur'an Study and Leadership. He began his studies during the life of Imam W. Muhammad under his tutelage, with a special focus on Quranic, Arabic, Islamic studies, and comparative religion. He continued his studies at Madina Institute, receiving a degree in al-Deen, as well as earning an ijaza in Hafs reading, and is currently completing ijazat in the different recitations, Ashara al-Sughra and Kubra, in addition to tafsir, hadith sciences, which he studies the text known as Bulugh al-Maram, and also the 6 books of the canon of the Sunni tradition. He has served as the Assistant Imam for the Atlanta Masjid of Al-Islam since 2015, and the Assistant Imam to Sultan Muhammad Islamic Center prior to that, from the years 2009 to 2015. He authors 3 different books, and he also runs an important YouTube channel, which inshallah, hopefully we get the opportunity to speak about eventually. I'd like to bring to the screen our brother, our Imam, Rashad Abdul-Rahmaan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, alhamdulillah, barakallah feek. It really is a pleasure and honor once again to have the opportunity to have a discussion with you, Brother Imam. As you know, earlier in the year, you interviewed me on your channel. And so we wanted to showcase you today. How are things going?
Oh, alhamdulillah, I can't complain. I thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Everything is good. Everything is good.
Alhamdulillah. Well, of course, eventually we're going to talk about your channel, but I did want to begin with a fundamental question, which I ask all of my guests, which is, who are you? Tell us about yourself, about your upbringing, your journey to where you are today, whatever you'd like to share.
Yes. Yeah. Bismillah. Well, I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. My parents were members of the Nation of Islam, and they made the transition, what we call the transition, or the second resurrection, under Imam W. Deen Mohammed. So my father I was raised by my stepfather. Actually, he was in the Nation of Islam, and my biological father was in the Nation of Islam. But my mother, she actually joined in 75. She said she liked the Nation of Islam, the brothers wearing suits and things like that. She said, but she couldn't agree. She didn't believe in the mothership and all of that black man is God stuff. But when she heard Imam Muhammad, or when she began to read the articles that they would publish, she said, okay, I think this is something I can join. So there was 8 of us. It was a typical black Muslim family. I think the fact that it was 8 of us is indicative of a typical black Muslim family, these big families. And interestingly enough, our parents were really learning the religion at the same time as we were. You know what I mean? They didn't really have what I would consider to be established Islamic knowledge before them. They were really following the leader, Imam Muhammad. They were really following him. But as it pertains to, learning the Arabic language or learning the jurisprudence and things like that, that just wasn't a part of it, except in a very basic way. We prayed, we fasted and things like that. But what I can say, and this is what I'm about to mention, is typical of a lot of my peers who grew up in the community. I can recall us being woken up for Fajr prayer every morning. We would sit around as a family and read from the Yusuf Ali translation every morning. My stepfather would discuss the verses, things like that. So there was definitely an emphasis on the importance of Islam. And I can also remember the fact that we were different. We were just different. Again, Chicago is it's a gang city. The gang culture is very strong there. And I just remember Um, you know, my stepfather, I mean, we would make prayer. They would be outside. The guys would be outside just blasting the music, smoking weed. And he would go outside and say, look, we're making prayer. Can you all hold that until we're done? And they would do it. And he would take the bus because he worked downtown Chicago. So he would take the bus every morning back and forth. But I just remember other members in my neighborhood, other young men telling me how much they respected him because he would wear a suit every day. That old nation, you know, he would shave every morning. He had a beard, but he would trim it, you know. Much later, I mean, much later, probably when we were in high school, latter years of high school, did he start dressing casually. But I remember him wearing a suit, shaving every morning, etc. Listening to Imam Muhammad tapes while he's doing it. You know what I'm saying? So this is after Fajr prayer. So when you grow up like that, you don't realize the effect that it's having on you, you know. But I know I can actually remember a time because I had a lot of friends from the neighborhood, and I remember I had one of my neighbors, the second house over. You know, his mother, she was just in a bad relationship, and my friend, you know, he had reached the point where he was drinking beer in the morning, and he used to tell me like, you know, it's sweet. He said beer's sweet to me, and I remember hanging out with him one night. And coming home, in my home, the way my home was, the way my mother had prepared it, you know, it smelled good. It was, you know, plants, books, you know, it was different from the environment outside. And it really struck me that I've been blessed, you know, to grow up in this kind of environment, because I think a lot of us as Muslim Americans, African Americans, you know, we kind of grew up in the culture has a strong tug on us, especially as males. And if we're not situated properly, it's very easy for us to not really appreciate how we are actually different from the common lot of a lot of our people in these inner cities. So that was really my upbringing. I mean, it was I would say a strict home, traditional home, you know, chores and things like that. I mean, just, you know, all of that stuff. And it wasn't until years later, I think I was 19, when I began to take the study of the religion a bit more seriously. At that time, the Imam had the program. I'm sure you heard of this before, where we were offered scholarships. Our community was all offered scholarships to study, for students to study in Damascus, Syria. It's about 100 scholarships.
Right.
With Abu Nur University. What most people don't know is that relationship was started in the Nation of Islam. Sheikh Ahmed Kuftaro actually came to America in the 60s, I believe it was. It could have been the 70s. But when he came, he was told that there is this group of deviant Muslims, and you know, don't mix up with them. He said, well, listen, I'm a da'i, and if you're telling me that there are a group of deviant Muslims here, it's my job to go meet them.
That's right.
So he met. So I like that. I love this story. So he met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he made the offer then that I'll bring. We can accommodate some of your members to come over as students and study their religion. Now, there's some more detail to the story. There was some exchange, but the short end of it is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him, my people are not ready, but one day they will be. So you fast forward to, this was 99, where this opportunity resurfaced again. So that's what was going on in our community amongst the young people who wanted to study Deen. By the time I kind of woke up and got serious, it was already in motion. But at the same time, Imam Muhammad himself was conducting classes in the Chicago area, which is where I was. So I wasn't situated to go to Damascus, Abu Nur. I began my studies, as you mentioned in the bio there.
Yeah. MashaAllah. Yeah, I really do appreciate that. It's interesting, like how I learned so much from the people I interview. There are a lot of people I've known for years, and to actually interview them, I learned new things. And I mean, of course, our relationship is relatively new, so it's a bit different. But But at the same time, I'm just really fascinated often by just sometimes like just the overlap and how there are a lot of similarities between our families. And like we're seven, there's seven of us, there are eight of you guys. And I'm assuming they're all these are largely the same mother and father, right? So when you
Most
talk about, yeah, okay,
majority.
you talk about a typical like African-American family, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, like today, you may find still, large numbers of siblings and families. Unfortunately, they're not really families anymore, but
Right.
just you have, more of them are, of course, multiple fathers, not only two, but it could be more than that, right? Quite often, unfortunately. So as we know, yeah, so that's really, 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 really nice to hear about like your upbringing, and you were brought up in a household where Islam is being practiced, you've been awakened for Fajr and things like that. And so did you ever go to Syria? I mean, did you, of course, the scholarships were there, available, but why didn't you have the opportunity, I guess you would say, to actually go there?
Yeah, by the time I really would, again, I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the students, the various groups, they were already in motion.
Okay.
So I didn't even, once I found out, once I entered into Imam Muhammad's class, I just didn't pursue it. I had known members of our community some had went for a year. As a matter of fact, the class that Imam Muhammad himself conducted, it was started by one of the students from Chicago who went to Damascus. Her mother got sick, so she came back, and she was really one of our the first Arabic teacher for that class. So I just didn't have the opportunity. It's a lot of funny stories. I mean, it's a lot of people. Some people in our community actually just missed the plane, and that's why they never got to go. It was just, a lot of different things. Yeah, so that's what that was. But his classes, they lasted. They started in 01, but I began in 03, all the way to the beginning of 07. And of course, he passed in 08. So that was just where I was in terms of my initial. It wasn't just him. We had a brother there who was teaching us tajweed and also teaching us grammar, Quranic Arabic or Arabic grammar. So that was sort of we would come to class, go over recitation, get into grammar. Then the Imam would come and sort of share his insights into the Qur'an, Muhammad's tradition, etc.
Right. That's great. Yeah. I mean, that's really great that you had the opportunity to actually, spend time with the Imam, rahimahullah. And that in itself, a lot of people today really can't say that anymore. Of course, the older generation, sure, but like people your age, I would say, or my age, really can't say that. And the only time I actually had an opportunity to spend in his presence was when I first moved here to California, 2007. There was a big event that was put together in San Francisco by Imam Abu Qadir al-Amin, rahimahullah, who just passed away.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Right. And so I was invited to speak, and actually it was the first time I actually met Imam Sulaiman as well,
Okay. Yes, sir.
So we all shared the stage, me, Imam Sulaiman, and then eventually Imam W. Muhammad came to the stage, rahimahullah. So it was the very first time I actually met him, and spent any time in his presence, and I noticed quite a bit about him, right, just from his dress, right. And I don't know if I've even mentioned this before in our interview, but I think when I mentioned this when I interviewed Imam Dawud Walid, because Imam Dawud Walid actually did highlight, he wanted people to not forget the teachings of the Imam. And so, but one thing I noticed about him was that, like, his suit was probably a $50 suit.
Yeah.
Right. And he had sneakers. He was wearing sneakers, dark black sneakers. They were tattered a bit.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, subhanAllah, I mean, just for an individual who's a national leader, right?
Yeah.
With international appeal, right?
Right.
To be wearing like such, cheap, type of clothing, I mean, it says something about a certain amount of asceticism that he engaged in, right? And so I was really just taken by that, really impressed me, just to see that he was a very humble person, right, despite everything.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I actually read that in a magazine. Someone was writing an article about Muslims in America, and the author, I cannot remember the magazine, but he was taking note of Imam Muhammad's dress. It was noticeable. It's quite noticeable.
Right.
And I guess I don't want to call any names, but you could actually compare that to how other leaders.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Black religious leaders dress. Right. I really think, to be honest, my experience, I didn't really know how to, because it wasn't just me. There were other students. When we were in the presence of Imam Muhammad at the time, we didn't have, because our community is relatively new.
Yes.
As so a lot of times you experience things, but you don't have the scholarly language or the insight to really categorize it or understand it.
Right.
So we would have just some very interesting experiences. Like we would, myself, a group of other students, we would talk about an issue one day, like on a Friday, and we said, we'll ask Imam on Sunday. And as soon as we bring it up, he answers the question. He didn't even know. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to go, but there's a long list of things. It wasn't until much later where I began to read the literature to kind of have context for this.
Right.
So this is a part. I mean, we're I think it's just a chapter in the history of Islam in America that has to be written.
Yes.
And it has to be reflected upon and benefited from.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely highly misunderstood, I would say. I mean, I would even include myself among those people, and I think, I don't think that the community is all to blame for that. I would say that sometimes, I mean, his teachings were just too cryptic and too, I guess you'd say, foreign for a lot of us, in the sense of, like, esoteric language, et cetera, but definitely, I mean, he's been a major contribution to Islam in America, as we all know. No one can deny that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and have mercy on him. Now, Madina Institute, we're talking about the one in Atlanta, which it was run by Shaykh Muhammad Ninowy.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Right. So when did you start there again? And then,
oh man, I can't even remember, man. It was a long time. But what I really, so I'm going to connect this back to the Imam Muhammad piece. The way we were educated by Imam Muhammad, it was very open. Imam Muhammad was a philosopher. I would say an inspired philosopher, among other things, but there's sort of a sensitivity in our community to sort of proceed with caution as it pertains to the quote unquote tradition. Proceed with caution in the sense of let's look at it, let's engage it, study it, and make intelligent decisions in terms of what we feel would be the best for our circumstances today. Right. So as a member of the community of Imam Muhammad, that has always been the sensitivity. Madina Institute was almost like a perfect fit because Shaykh Ninowy's sort of his theme was, we don't indoctrinate here. So we studied the various schools of law. We studied predominantly, or really only, Maturidi and Ash'ari.
The creed.
Yes. And so we didn't deal with Athari, but we did, the Shafi'i school, Hanafi school, Maliki. And, his approach is a Hadithi approach. So, he would that on its own has this unique benefit. Right.
Yeah.
And he would bring in other teachers, and those teachers wouldn't even always agree with him. It was interesting. I really, really respected that. Like Sheikh Suhail Lahar, we did the Kitab al-Ilal, for example, the smaller one. Right. And we did a couple more books, Nukhbatul Fiqh, basic books. But we would ask him questions, or the students would ask him questions based upon some Shaykh Ninowy. We say, well, no, I don't really agree with that. But the Shaykh loved him, and I really, for me, coming from the community that I'm from, it was very beneficial. For me, I would recommend to anyone. I mean, I'm not familiar with the other curriculum or just the other institutions in terms of how they have things structured, but I do. I don't know how Medina has how it is now. And then one of the unique thing about our year, several of the teachers couldn't make it.
Okay.
So Shaykh Ninowy had to stay and do most of the teaching for our year. So it was very unique. It was a unique year. And, you know, we did a little bit of everything. So I really enjoyed it. I can't remember the time frame though.
No, it's okay. No, I mean, you have the great blessing of having exposure to one of the great imams of American history, and also one of the great scholars, right? You know, of traditional scholars, Shaykh Ninowy, right? I mean, no one can deny, like, you know, his credentials, right? He's one of the great scholars of his time, of our time, and of course, like anybody, you know, like anybody can be criticized, or, you know, there's going to be people who disagree with what they say or their viewpoints on a lot of different things. But the fact that someone will actually say to you, hey, well, we're here, we're going to study this, you know, you don't have to take my position, you know, but I'm just going to just give you what I learned, right? And, you know, you do with it what you will after that. And I think that that's an important, extremely important during our times with, you know, where it seems that more and more people are constantly trying to control us, right? You know, our you know, the population, our minds, et cetera, as we've seen it, you know, especially over the past few years, you know, with the government and those types of things, right? The media, et cetera, right? But at any rate, so Madina Institute. So I'm assuming that, okay, you studied in Arabic very early as well?
Yes. Yeah, I was doing Arabic, again, going back to that first class I had with Imam. Then I took it at college, took Arabic in college.
Okay.
And then we did it in Medina too. But I did a lot of Arabic. And, you know, his approach, again, he say, look, I don't care if you can speak Arabic. You need to just be able to navigate the texts. And going back to him, I actually remember differing with him on a few things. Not differing, I shouldn't say that, but questioning him. And I mean, he not only did he, it was an intellectually stimulated. I think that his strength as an institution is the academic integrity. Where does the evidence lead?
Yes.
You know, and I really appreciated that. And that's sort of like my flavor.
Right. Yeah.
So I can remember, for example, he believed, you know, like the ascension. There's a line in the Creed of Imam Tahawi, you know, about the embody, and he was saying, well, he was using the notion of, you know, the wormhole. He was trying to put some modern language on it. He said, how do we not know the Prophet was traveling at the speed of light through wormholes, and that's to the level. And I just remember questioning him on that, and he said, you know, it was just, you felt comfortable doing that. That's what and one of the things that he used to emphasize is the more the more you learn in the tradition, the more you can accommodate so many perspectives. And he was very anti dogmatism. So I really think that it's that institution is really sort of a hidden gem in terms of the benefit of it, especially for us here in America. You know what I mean? But in terms of Arabic, yeah, you know, I've done some Arabic. Arabic is I've done a lot of personal study and in class study. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, see, the reason I'm actually digging this way is because I'm trying to work up to a different question, and I didn't have this question initially before the interview started, you know, but I do think that some of our viewers will actually take issue with something, you know, so and that has to do with, again, to your reference to Elijah Muhammad as the honorable Elijah Muhammad, right?
Yeah.
So typically people will say, okay, well, okay, this individual, these are one of these old nation people, They just
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
keep it up. They don't know Arabic. Usually they don't know much about Islam, right? And so basically I'm like, okay, well, and again, I'm not trying to justify the use of the title, but I do want to ask you, like, why do you utilize it or refer to him in that particular fashion? Is it really because of a belief in, I guess you'd say, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot,
No, it's fine.
yeah, but is that, because I know you have a lot of like these really nice shorts on your YouTube channel, and you deal with a lot of very difficult and important questions, right? Maybe this will be one of those things that you deal with in the future as well, right? Is like, why continue to refer to an individual who claimed to actually have been sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we know that to be false? Why do you refer to the individual as an honorable, right? Is it simply a title, or is it something you really feel strongly about,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I think that was his name. Like when I say it, that's just what his name was. So I wouldn't say the dear holy apostle. I wouldn't say that.
Right.
But the Honorable Elijah, the Honorable Marcus Garvey, like that's just what he's called.
Right.
What's the other guy? Noble Drew Ali.
Yes.
Noble is interchangeable with honorable. What you call him? Noble Drew Ali claimed to have a Quran, but that's just his name. I don't look at it beyond that. I will say this. I actually want to write a book on this. I will say, and I know that this is sort of a touchy, but you brought it up, and I think we can handle this.
Sure.
I think that it's very, going back to Sheikh Ahmed Kuftaro, not only him, but many other leaders of the Muslim world who had interaction with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Why didn't they take such staunch or stern positions against him? I think there's a wisdom to be found in that. And my grandfather was I often tell this story. My grandfather was he used to read a lot in grammar school, and he would he said, I was a kid. He said, they'd tell me read chapter 1, and I would read it, but I didn't want to stop the book, so I would keep going. The principal came to his home and told his mother that your son is learning too much and too fast. A white person said, your son is learning too much and too fast, and if he keeps going, his brain is going to explode. So keep him. Everybody has the same reaction as you. Me too, when I first heard it. Because in our modern context, that's just crazy. Can you imagine a principal coming to tell you that, telling me that? But these were rural, Southern, uneducated people. They kept him home from school. They believed it. And my grandfather, he would share the story. He said he was never able to kind of, like we used to say in the South, he never got his mojo back. That just sort of crippled him. So I'm using that as an example to say this. In our modern context, I think we really underestimate the actual state and condition of a lot of uneducated, sharecropping, grandchildren of slave African-American people. And we sort of come from our modern, more privileged, I would even argue, perspective, and we cast judgment. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a man similar to my grandfather, who really was older than my grandfather by a generation or more, who had a third grade education. And here comes a man from another part of the world giving him these strange ideas. It's not like he gave them to him in Pakistan. Or he gave them to him in Arabia, though Pakistan, as a political entity wasn't in existence at that time. But in other words, he wasn't a product of the Muslim world. He didn't know.
Right.
And then as he began to learn more and more later, what did he do? The same son that he put out 3 times for rejecting Farad Muhammad and for rejecting him as the messenger, he saw to it that one would be the leader of his community to lead them into Islam. So it's like, you have to, if we're going to, it reminds me of Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Qur'an. He observes the star rise and he makes a conclusion, but he obviously kept watching it, because when it set, he said, I love not those that set.
Mhm.
And then he followed it all the way. So, the star, the moon, the sun. So I think that to really get an objective and a fair reading on any phenomena, you have to look at the whole thing from A to
Right.
Z, then draw the conclusion. I don't think that's done.
Mhm.
One of the brothers who wrote a book, he said it can be argued. Well, it's a stretch, but he says it can be argued that Elijah Muhammad was the first convert to Orthodox Islam in our community. Because after he saw where his son was and where he wanted to take the community, he was the first to accept it and told all the ministers, stay out of his way and let him do what he's going to do. And that's what happened. So I could be, I have my perspective because I'm from the community, obviously. You see what I'm saying? But I would, that's kind of my position. But I hear that a lot. It's like, I was the honorable,
No, I think that's a good answer. I mean, it's, again, I wanted to bring that out. Again, I wanted to hear your perspective. I imagined even before you started to answer, there's going to be some wisdom that's going to come from it, right? And I do think that the idea that we have to look at the entire journey of an individual to fully understand where they're coming from. Of course, ultimately, we don't know the fate of anyone, right, after they leave this world.
Yeah.
And if they've done wrong, we have to acknowledge, okay, this is wrong. They're wrong here, they're wrong there. We can never say, okay, we can't justify anything that they said or they did that happens to be wrong, right? And actually, one of the main objectives of this podcast, to me, has always been to actually help people to understand the journeys of our different leaders, right?
Yeah.
And because I believe that through understanding their journeys, it helps you to appreciate them more, helps you to understand them more. It even helps you to hopefully not be as judgmental and as critical of them, right? Once you understand what people had gone through to reach the point where they are today, And so in a similar fashion, it's like constantly, like the issue of slavery brought up today. Like, for instance, I remember years ago, the Republicans really didn't really argue that much about slavery, but like nowadays when people bring it up, they make a similar argument that Muslims make. They'll say, okay, well, the Prophet Muhammad had slaves. They say, well, you listen, everybody has slaves. That was there's a different time. But like conservatives, they're like, how are you going to judge George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and all these other people for slavery? But back then everybody had slaves. And this was the norm, and nobody considered it to be evil, right? So we should try to do that with everyone, right? And that's where I feel about it, is that everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt,
right?
When it comes to those type of moral issues, and again, not justifying any wrong that anyone has done. Of course, not saying that the Prophet or anyone else did any wrong, but I do think that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, He wants His religion to be transmitted from person to person, as opposed to from the book to the person, right? Of course, in the book itself is a reference point, but the real transmitter of knowledge is the human being, right? And too many people today actually lack the proper etiquette, of disagreement, the etiquette of just, I guess you say, compassion, right? That typically is transmitted from person to person, not just by reading something and then making a judgment about other people based upon what you read.
Right. Yes, sir. I like that. I like that, and that's even in our community, most people were not able to study up close with Imam Muhammad. They would go to lectures and things like that. But when you, I mean, we all know this just from our human experience. It's a radically different thing when you're up close to a person. You can feel them. You can feel them. That person to person element is extremely it's extreme. It's necessary. It's actually necessary. And I think that we're in a time now. We've been in a time for a while. It may be some. It may not even be as bad as it used to be. I'm not sure, but I think that we've been sort of in a confusion. I'm talking about Black Muslims now. Period. we've been in a confusion where
Mhm.
it appears to me that our agenda is someone else's agenda.
Yes.
So we're not arguing with one another based upon issues that are really on the table for us when we leave the argument space. You know, we're arguing we've imported arguments.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
there's an element of artificiality, in my opinion,
Mhm.
attached to us, and I think we have to, but that's another segment. I mean, I don't want to go in too many directions,
No,
but I
I
think
mean, no, I think it's a good point. I mean, it's
yeah.
definitely, I mean, issues of priority. In other words, we have a tendency to prioritize what is important to others rather than what is important and really perhaps even urgent, with respect to us in our own context. And I would imagine that a reasonable person who is not a member of our race or another race would actually understand that. They would say, hey, well, as a matter of fact, in the Christian, it's this new term I just learned when I attend this annual conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan, called the Acton Institute or Acton University conference. It's a conference organized by conservative Christians. And they bring all these people from different religious backgrounds from about 400 different countries. There's about 1,000 plus people who attend every single year. And, they talk about things related to economics, ethics, et cetera, things like that. Right. So, and, so it's, subhanAllah, I sort of lost track. It was exactly the point I was trying to make there, but yeah, I'm sorry. What were we talking about? I got
no. I was highlighting the. So I was, because my mind sort of fast forward. I'm really thinking about it with all of these issues. Going back to the.
I'm sorry. No, that's what it was. I remember now. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
We're talking about issue of context, right? Understand like whose priorities should be placed before others. So this past year they had this term that they introduced called subsidiarity. Subsidiarity. In other words, they said that the idea that every group is to focus on its local concerns. Right. So even the Christians are talking about this as well. We already have this in our own tradition, is that, like you hear stories about people visiting Imam Malik and say, hey, we came from Iraq and we have these issues in Iraq and we want your fatwa on it. And he asked the question, well, have you asked your local scholars?
Right.
He said, well, no, we haven't. But go back and ask them first. Then if they don't have an answer, then come back to me. Right. So something along those lines. Right. So yeah, in the same fashion, each particular group, each demographic has its priorities. Right. Like, for instance, one would expect, of course, that a Palestinian is going to be, going to prioritize Palestine and the plight of the Palestinian people, right? Over anyone else, right? And you would expect the Indians to do that, the Afghans to do the same, any group of people to do the same. Even if people argue that, well, this is not only the Palestinian issue, this is an Islamic issue, which it is also an Islamic issue too. But again, but you just imagine we were all, it's only natural to expect that you would place your own concerns before others, your own children before other people's children, your own wife before another person's wife, right? Yeah. So it's just completely natural. So.
Yeah, and I think that that's a challenge for African American Muslims. I think that the African American Muslim communities, we haven't really carved out a direction for ourselves that is uniquely ours. I was watching this show actually with Dr. Jackson on it, and he made some very strong points. I mean, I think I my mind is getting confused because I saw it. I was at a lecture with Dr. Amina McLeod. I don't remember if she said it on your show or was it at this lecture. But the short end of it, it was similar to what Dr. Jackson was saying, that because they're older, they come from a time where the nation, despite its clear deviations, they made being a Muslim they made it authentically ours.
Right, exactly.
And I think that is a challenge that we have yet to really meet in our current circumstance. And I really would like to see, I really would like to see us do that. These various, because we have some good teachers, and we have some we have some just good people. But I think that what we need is sort of an agenda. You know what I mean? An agenda that is authentic to whatever we say that our needs are. And if we don't have that, then it's sort of like we're just spinning our wheels,
Yeah. Now, of course, we have, a crisis of leadership. We have a crisis. Well, many different crises, as you know. I mean, of course, we definitely need to try again and again and again, to keep trying to put the wheels back on, I guess you would say. Right. But inshallah, hopefully we'll be able to do that one day. Now, you're at the Atlanta Masjid, you're an assistant imam, and you say you've been there since 2015, but you were an imam prior to that in Milwaukee. So how do you end up in Milwaukee?
So takes
from Chicago, then to Milwaukee, right?
Right. This takes me actually back to the class. When we were having class, the director of the school in Milwaukee used to come down for classes in Chicago, and he invited us to come. He ended up, he's my father-in-law now. I ended up marrying his daughter, but so that's how that happened. I mean, I was telling some, no one moves to Milwaukee. That's not a place you move to, But I ended up there, really working with him very closely. And, it's a small school, small masjid. The school, we had maybe anywhere between 150, 200 students. The masjid community was relatively small, 50 people maybe. But when I came, we were able to, we brought a lot of young people out. That's how I met my wife, actually. And then Imam Mansour here was stepping down as the Imam. Imam Suleiman called me. He and I had already had a relationship. Everybody in the community kind of knows each other nationally. So he asked me to come out here to assist him. And I talked about it with my wife. I was actually going to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. And we decided to make the move here. We decided it'll be worthwhile. So I've been here since 2015. And it's been interesting. The work, what do they call it? Pastoral care work. I really don't. I'm not a fan of it, to be honest.
Yeah. I have a lot of respect for imams because I know the type of stress that comes with it and the type of issues that you have to deal with on a regular basis. I don't envy, the position. I wasn't an imam in the prison, right? So I only had to deal with brothers' issues, right?
Gotcha.
But I've also been somewhat of an assistant to an imam in Philadelphia, Imam Shaykh Muhammad years ago. That. So I used to get, I would have, of course, a close look at some of the challenges that they would have as being an imam. So sometimes it's financial challenges, sometimes it's you're trying to help people through their marriages. Sometimes it can be threats of violence. There's a lot of things that can come up, right? And definitely don't envy the position, but I also respect those who actually do play that role, because of course somebody has to do it, and if you don't have, of course, the temperament for it, then it's really, really difficult.
And my interest has always been I would say scholarship, but philosophy, things of that nature, academic work. And I swear, just this Friday, a brother, Imam Siraj, has a family here. They run the restaurant that's attached. So his stepson, Muhammad, he called me. He said, "Yeah, man, I just stopped this lady. She was drinking beer and urinating on the parking lot. And I told her to go. And she said she's going to come back and shoot us all up. Now, he has to report this just because it's an issue.
Yeah.
But he's sending me her pictures. Now, mind you, brother, this is like Friday evening. I'm relaxing with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
That's what goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what goes on for a lot of what we call resident imams. They're dealing with a lot of, it's not just the members of your community, but you live in a neighborhood and you don't know who these people are. We had a guy one time, they come to the restaurant. And one time we had a brother, we watched it on the camera after it was over. One of our community pioneer brother, older brother, he says, look, man, can you move over? He was parked in 2 spaces. Long story short, man, the guy gets out and shoots his tire. Just ghetto. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's what you have to deal with. You said, look, man, I just want to make my prayer. I just want to make prayer and go home. I don't want to deal with all of this. So I'm with you. I think Imam Suleiman, now some people live for it. Some people are really good at it. That's just what they're just good at, the pastoral care thing. I can do it. But I don't, I would, you learn yourself too.
Yeah. Right.
So I come to find out that a lot of my advice when it comes to marital issues, they're not that popular. Now, I'm not making this stuff up off the cuff, but I think that's another element that we have to deal with. We this modern sort of the modern culture, it's just seeped into so many corners of our life. People are not traditional anymore.
Yes.
And it gets very difficult, when you're trying to give advice based upon Islamic standards that are traditional. People just don't want to accept it. I don't even know. I'm trying to find an eloquent way to put it, but they don't want to accept it.
Yeah, true. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you mean, right. So, I mean, outside of your Islamic education, I mean, have you actually gone to college for something else other than Islam? You studied other topics?
I didn't finish philosophy and comparative religion. Okay. Yeah, okay. I have like a semester left. I actually left when I moved out here. I was in my last semester and I just never went back. But that was my field, philosophy and comparative religion. Okay.
So you said you were planning to move to North Carolina. Why there?
The community that we have there, I just liked it. In North Carolina is at the time, I don't know what the statistics are now, but it was the #1 up and coming city for African American millennials. A lot of development. So I was just looking at the projections of the city, and I had some good friends there. We had one of the Muslim brothers there. He was a city councilman. Now he's on the Senate, the state Senate. So really? We just have some, we had some good, a lot of opportunity there. And I remember telling Imam Suleiman, he said, well, would you consider moving out to Atlanta? I said, no, I don't. I always felt that, in our community, we should be spread out, as spread out as possible. But, I didn't know at the time when he asked me that the current imam at that time was stepping down.
Okay, so that's how you came in. So when Imam Mansour was leaving, Imam Suleiman, he reached out to you and asked you to come in. Okay.
Right. Yes. That's what happened. So that's how that happened. So we so it's been going on for a while. Like I said, I'm not I don't regret the experience at all. And the work. And we need more imams. I think there's another issue where we don't have enough young men stepping up to take that responsibility. I think a lot of them see it and don't want it. They see the challenges, they see the little pay. So that's something that I'm working on fixing right now in our community.
Inshallah. Now, of course, you have your YouTube channel, and so it looked like it's just under your name, Rashad Abdul-Rahmaan, right? Abdul-Rahmaan, right. So, what's your main focus? I mean, what's the objective? In starting your YouTube channel, what are you trying to communicate to people through your post?
Yeah, it's interesting. going back to that philosophy piece, I have an opinion on about it, almost everything. But so politically, social issues, economic issues, AI, whatever. And I think that our religion has the answer for the world, just to be honest. And I think that our religion has the correct perspective for the problems of the world. So what I imagine, what I do now, I just take up a handful of issues and talk about them. Like tomorrow, I may talk about the 2025 project from an Islamic, just give my 2 cents as a Muslim Islamic perspective on it. But where I really want to go with it, I really would like to, one of my concerns is that, or what I would like to see, we don't have enough Muslims addressing, again, AI, the geopolitical landscape, all of these major issues that we see affecting the world today. Muslims, even Muslims on YouTube, they seem to be insular. That we're talking to ourselves about ourselves. But one of the things that I appreciate, even going to the 2025 project, these right-wing Christians, they have a cause. They believe this nation is ours. And we have a vested interest in preserving it at the academic level, at the economic level, political level. They're not just in the church. And I think that the Muslims need to have a similar, really not even similar, a much more advanced approach to the state of the world when it comes to the sciences, just any issue that is affecting the world scene today. I think Muslims should be in the forefront of addressing these matters. So that's really where I want to take the channel to. I was just in Kenya about a week or more ago for with the Global Peace Foundation, and the theme was, forget the exact language, but the main term in the theme was the global African Renaissance. And we're sitting there with imams, scholars, archbishops, etc., but they're all from different parts of the African continent, and they are grappling. It's some like PLO Lumumba. There's some Pan-Africanists there. And they're grappling with the issue of how do we bring about a rebirth for African life in light of the effect, the negative effect that has been left by colonialism, the economic colonialism that's still in place, as well as the psychological colonialism that's in place. And I just believe, I was a part. We're in those discussions. The members of our community, one of our brothers from our community who headed our delegation, he presented at a couple of these meetings throughout the week. But I think that we have something to say. Yeah. And I honestly believe that the Qur'an and the tradition of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they as sources of light, they're much more pure than the Bible. For example, obviously as a Muslim, but I'm saying that I believe that from a rational perspective, this can be like proven. There's one of the big church guys. He's sitting there with the red, the black, with the cross, and he's like, "We've been colonized mentally." It's like, it's to tell me what we don't know. You know what I mean? So he and I just think that they have a burden on them. And I'm just using that as an example. But so that's what I want for the channel to do. I really would like to address issues of the world from the perspective of the Quran and the prophetic tradition.
Yeah, no, I really do appreciate that. And it's really, superb sort of focus in trying to universalize the language, trying to universalize the appeal as well, to actually show that Islam has something to say about all these issues which are matters of concern. I don't think we've done anything on climate change yet, but we got to.
That's right. Yeah.
But no, I really do appreciate your, especially the shorter videos, the 10 minutes, and then sometimes you have your shorts. Very well done. I do think that people should, to subscribe to the channel, like, share, etc. A whole lot going on there. And recently you did an excellent video you posted about, well, I think you said 3 reasons why Muslims should embrace America.
Right.
And, so I shared that, and a lot of people really liked it. I loved it because Ed just followed an interview I did on a different podcast where I debated with some of the hosts about the Constitution, right? Because it's very clear to me that they really don't know much about the Constitution and about American history and about, what the framers of the Constitution, the founding fathers really had in mind for America. So we get this distorted view of the Constitution and America and the potentials, of America and even the value, right, of the country, right, internationally, despite everything that's happened with this government, right? So,
right. I think a lot of Muslims have gone woke. Woke Muslims. That should be a book. Woke Muslims, and I think it's a problem.
Yes.
They have accepted this sort of dichotomy of black and white, the oppressor and oppressed, and that's incorrect. And the beauty of the Qur'an, for example, Allah says in the judgment that the Satan will say, "Well, look, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I just invited them." So the way our book is, oppressors are condemned, but we're not let off the hook either. There's this sort of universal perspective of justice and personal obligation and responsibility. And I think that a lot of Muslims have just become detached from these sort of simple. These are not the deep, the deep and nuanced components of our tradition. The simple things. There was a time when the Muslims, when the Mongols will invade or something like that, or the Crusaders. What did we do?
Yes,
to bring this about. We don't think like that anymore.
Right.
The white man is the bad guy, and that's just not true. And I think that we have to change. We have to change that. For us in America, I really get tired of. I really get frustrated or tired of, but I'm saying in a positive way.
Yes.
Well, I should just say I strongly disagree with those who take a position. They get like, brother, you got to understand, they're on YouTube, like how we are right now. I got air conditioning running, lights, electricity pumping in America. Like I said, I was just in Kenya. I stopped in Ethiopia. I had the hotel was shut down for several seconds and come back on. And this is like downtown, the hotel. We just we're pampered. So here I am with you. After I'm done, I got my phone. After I'm done, I go order some food. What they call it? Not Grubhub. What's the one they come deliver the food to your house? Grocery house.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, there's I don't know, because you asked me, I forget what. Well, I know what you're talking about.
So we're just
Uber Eats and
Uber,
things like that.
And we sit up and talk about how bad this country is.
Yes,
it's like, come on, it's almost like this country. It has its problems. Now, let's not
sugarcoat it.
Let's not sugarcoat it. But I think that for leadership and for influence, it's there's a certain responsibility. And I think that the responsibility upon us who are speaking to the public, our responsibility is to put before them that which is positive, that which is of benefit, as well as the challenges that they face. But we have so many, especially like, for example, in the Black community, we have so many leaders who talk about how America is a problem. America's no good. And Dr. Dre, the problem with Dr. King wasn't that he had a dream, but that he woke up. It's like, man, get that out of here. That doesn't help us at all.
That's right. Yeah, totally. I'm totally with you. And people, I mean, people want, is as if like they want America just to fall apart, fall into civil, chaos, as if like we're going to somehow escape all of that chaos when it happens. And, why would you want that to happen to your own home? Right. Correct. Even if you say, okay, just you live in a place and why would you want it to fall apart? Yeah, we want the U.S. government to change its policy in the world and stop being as oppressive as they have been, stop being a bully. Yeah, sure, we want those things. But America is we can't allow it to be defined by its government's international policy.
That's right.
It's foreign policy, right? And because of they're just so much. I mean, we have the rule of law. I mean, like regardless. I mean, a lot of people in America, they are dealt injustices. A lot of people in prison and they shouldn't be in prison. True, right? But compared to what? Right. Compare that to other places, right?
That's right.
I mean, we generally have the rule of law, right? In other words, even like when you look at what's happening, like for instance, with Trump, and whether you like him or not, it's like, well, there are a lot of like fake, just phony cases against the man right now. Right? He's being persecuted by the government. But at the same time, he's also able to appeal these decisions and all of these efforts, right? You understand? Right. He's able to fight, right? To vindicate himself.
That's right.
That's not that easy in most places on the planet, right?
That's
to actually be able to do that. It's like you get accused of something, like say even like the fact that we even know that many people have been placed in prison for injustices, for things they didn't do. How do we even know that? We know that because there's a process. There's a rule of law, right? A person may spend 10 years in prison for something they don't do, they haven't done, but they eventually make it out, right? In many cases. Okay. Right. So in other words, I'm just that in itself has its own value. Has its own value by itself. That when you compare it to other places, you're going to go somewhere, you get accused of something, you get thrown into a prison, to a dungeon, and the key thrown away and just completely forgotten forever, right? And there's no way to address that injustice, right? So
that's right. And I think it would behoove Muslims in America to really make themselves serious students of the system.
Yes.
Because we have citizenship rights and responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and this kind of moves over into the immigrant Muslim community as well. Mm-hmm. I see them, and I don't say this in the spirit of negativity, but I see them in a lot of ways as being reactive, largely reactive, not proactive.
Yeah.
And I think that if Muslims would become aware of what America is as a political entity,
yes,
and we really could make great strides in this country. We really, really could. And I would like to see, outside of just African-American Muslims, again, all Muslims, we really should be strategizing for that. Because now this may get a little bit more, what do you call it? I don't have the word at the moment, but this may be a little bit more way out. I just honestly believe that the rise of Islam in America is extremely significant. And I think that we shouldn't take it lightly. And I think that we should be anticipating for Muslims and Islam to spread and to gain a strong foothold here and become an influence, just like the Jews and other Christian groups have. We should be anticipating that. And I actually look for the day. I don't know if I don't think I'll be around when Muslims will be dominant here. That's been the history of the Ummah up until this point. Right. Why should it be different now? And not just here, but in Canada, South America. So I think if we were working with that type of vision, if we were working in our places with that type of vision, it would really give us the proper context to again, because I'm with you. It's like, look, we want America to fall, and it's going to fall on our heads. So we're going to be the ones, catching the brunt of. And I see places like Philadelphia, the Dearborn area, just Michigan. These are sort of strongholds in terms of just Muslim populations.
Yes.
You all have a college.
Yes.
Oh, we have it, but I'm saying you as because you staff. So these are wins. These are serious wins that we should be looking at from a strategic perspective in terms of where do we want to be in the next 150, 100, all the way to 300 years at least. I think that's how we should be planning.
Right. Yeah. So mashallah. It's I have a few more questions for you.
Sure.
So basically, we've spoken about Imam Muhammad, and I was wondering, like, if there's any person other than him that you feel that that we can know more about, or perhaps we can learn more from, or we should, be trying to learn more about, right? Either someone from the past, some contemporary person. But of course, a lot can be said about him. And even if you decide, okay, well, maybe it's just him. Maybe he's the one that we need to we focus on. Maybe we need to read more of his works. Maybe we should listen to more of his talks. But I'd just like to sort of leave the audience with at least some area of research, some paths to take beyond the actual interview. Like, okay, I'm gonna look more into this particular person, right, or these particular people.
That's a good one. Well, let me think. That's a really good one. It's a, well, I would put it this way. I would look at, and this connects to what we were saying about Imam Muhammad, but also what we were saying about the United States of America. I would encourage African Americans, but also Muslims in general, to take a serious look at the trajectory of African American leadership. I don't, a lot of times when people talk about Imam Muhammad, it's almost as though they can't quite they can't fit him into, it's like, okay, where does he fit? When he first passed away, there was this whole talk about him being, did he have his own madhab and all of this weird stuff. And I think it's because he was a Muslim. And as a Muslim, we're trying to fit him in sort of this pattern or this template of Muslim leadership. I never really saw him in that template. I always saw him in the template of the Black religious tradition. Or just the Black leadership tradition. So when you look at Malcolm, Dr. King, and you go all the way back to persons like Frederick Douglass, Dr. King, for example, he did teach in a classroom setting, but the bulk of what we have from him is in the form of lectures. But Dr. King, it's very clear from his lectures that he had a theology.
Yes.
He clearly had a theology. And I think that that's the approach to study Imam Muhammad. He clearly had a philosophical approach to scripture and Islam, particularly, but it's not upon the pattern of the great leaders that we're aware of, and it's definitely not in an academic setting, like they call an armchair philosopher. He was a leader of a community, like Dr. King was leading a movement. So his theology is woven in the lectures. Now we can now study these lectures of Dr. King and sort of extract. And I think that that's pretty much true for the trajectory of Black leaders, going all the way back, as I mentioned, to men like Du Bois. The reason why I'm saying I think that that's important is because Marcus Garvey is another one. The reason why I think that that's important is because we understand, our belief is that our coming into Islam in this time is the fruit of that tree. It's the end result of that trajectory. These men were wanting freedom. They were wanting justice. They were wanting their human dignity to be affirmed. That's why my parents joined the Nation of Islam. My father, he said, my father-in-law, he said, I was called nigger every day. Every day. So even the Nation of Islam, I remember we interviewed an old sister. She said, when they told me that the white man was was a devil, she said, I didn't have any problem believing it because I used to work, me and my sister used to work for a white man and he tried to rape us every day. So, those things get missed, but this is our history. So when you see this freedom, this trajectory of leaders from the Sojourner Truth, we know her story. She was also the victim of abuse, and she would go out into the wilderness and ask God for help. And I believe, even though they were Christian, I believe that trajectory in terms of the human spirit,
yes,
what was in the soul, trying to find God, trying to find what was true and what was real, that has flowered into our coming into Al-Islam today. So that's what I would say. I mean, it's not one figure per se.
Yes,
but I would definitely say that long line of figures in that long movement. And we're here. I think we're here. Yes, sir.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It sort of brings back to mind a couple of things I had heard, a couple other guests mentioned, like for instance, like Dr. Khalid Blankenship, when I interviewed him, we talked a little bit about his perspective on Muslim history and how Muslims have to sort of try to create like a more universal history, which gives a bit more consideration to like non-Muslim perspectives, right? You know, and how you incorporate that into a larger sort of total Islamic history, which centers around the idea of the search for God, right? You know, and sort of being sort of like placed out of, I guess you'd say, losing your way and then finding your way back, right? You know, it's you know, so yeah, it sounds similar to that, and so the ideas of just even like in your channel itself, trying to focus on more universal issues that of universal concern, Islam, the role that Islam plays in that, you know, and how the Prophet ﷺ himself as well was really concerned with those type of issues, right? You know, and so that's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's almost like Muhammad the Prophet, praise and peace be upon him. He's the answer to all of the ailments that have afflicted the soul of the African American people. That's how we see it. Now, I'm not discluding other people, but
of course. Right.
This is like if I were to write a book inviting our people to Al-Islam, I would let them know that what we've been searching for Allah, obviously, but I'm saying I would add into that you know that we would find in him the model that through his model we can realize that which our soul, because our soul was cut off. We were cut off. We were cut off. So, you know, there's some deep, so this goes back to the issue of prioritizing our needs as a people. We have a distinct set of psychological needs.
Yes.
As it pertains to identity, worth, value. And I think that it plays itself out in certain ways, such as when you come into our neighborhoods, we don't own anything. That's very odd.
Yes.
And it's not that we don't own anything. We don't even care. We don't care that we don't own anything. It doesn't even come up as an issue. So it's an odd state of mind to be in. And I think that Al-Islam is the medicine for these. I think Christianity is, with due respect, is poisonous to us because the way we were brought into to Christianity and the way we stay in Christianity, it keeps us entertained. It keeps us emotionally based. It doesn't keep us. It doesn't build us up. Al-Islam is just completely different in terms of its emphasis on ilm. To your point, this tradition of heart to heart scholarship, but not just ilm, but amal. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Right.
It's just and look, I haven't found a person. I mean, I'm sure you would agree, but I would challenge any person outside of us without, they have to X out the bigotry. We can't find a person more beautiful than our prophet.
That's right.
In terms of answering the needs of all people. So it's this. I just think that's what we need to, that's what we need to focus on as a group, and then also benefit from the Qur'an and our prophet in terms of what we do as Muslims in America.
Right. Now you have a few books and I imagine that people can find them on Amazon, right? So
I'm not on Amazon, man. I don't.
Okay. You don't work with them. Okay.
Yeah, I have one here. Yeah. One of these I actually want to send you. I want to get your. I need some critiques on my books. But if you have the time, I know you're a professor and all of that.
Yeah, well, I read all the time, so it's just a question. It's always just a question of if I have interest in reading the particular book at the moment, right? But of course, if you send it to me, I'll read it.
Okay, yes, sir. So the first one, The Foundations of Al-Islam. It's really sort of a philosophical discussion of the 5 pillars. And then I have one, The Message of Al-Islam. I'm actually going to post that on the page for free. Okay. We use it for people who, they either take Shahada or they say, well, look, I want to learn more about Islam. And then I have one called on Prophets and Prophetic Types. And And I'm working on a couple. I'm working on one right now, Black Suffering and the Sunnah of God. And, taking this idea of the Sunnah of God and analyze Black suffering through that lens. So, I have a few, but you can go to my IQSLpublications.com. That's where the books are.
IQSLpublications.com. Okay. Yeah. So that's the way where people can follow you for the most part, is that IQSL Publications?
No, so they can follow my YouTube channel, which is just my name. I didn't have anything fancy to. And then my Instagram page is the same. I think it's here. This Rashad.
Rashad Abdul-Rahmaan. Okay.
But that's just the IQSL Publications is just the website for the books.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Well, Imam Rashad, is really, really a pleasure as always to have a conversation with you. I'm looking forward to future opportunities to have these type of exchanges, and where I learned a lot. I'm quite sure that others have learned quite a bit as well. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you and grant you tawfiq, you would say, and may He grace you to always do the right thing and be on the right page, inshallah, and maybe He, magnify your benefit through everything that you're doing, inshallah.
Ameen. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Check the links in the description below to keep up with our work. Thank you.